Breaking news just into the Fox 4 newsroom. We are learning that a verdict has been reached in the Mark Sievers trial. Now, we have a team that has been outside of the courthouse. We've been tracking this story since the beginning. So we're going to send it right out to Jane Monreal and Sandra Rodriguez. They are live outside of the courtroom. We're waiting for a verdict. Jane, what do we know right now? What are we seeing?
Do you hear all this? Okay.
I hear it.
Okay. Yes, Shari, we are standing by for the verdict. We do know that a jury has reached a verdict at this late hour. They were in deliberations. They were supposed to be released at 6:30, but they have reached a verdict here after both the state and defense presented their closing arguments. Mark Sievers did not take the stand. We're looking at the family that is in the courtroom as well, waiting for this all-important decision on the fate of Mark Sievers in the killing of his wife, Dr. Teresa Sievers, back in 2015 in their Bonita Beach home. Sandra Rodriguez is getting back into the courtroom, and we also have our photographer there as well as we stand by outside for the verdict. We will be bringing this to you as soon as the jury is back into the courtroom. But again, a little bit of a surprise that we are learning a verdict has been reached. They only went into deliberations after a few hours of closing arguments from both the prosecutors and the defense. So with that understanding, they have reached a verdict so quickly after seeing all of the evidence in this relatively short trial. The judge gave it about 6 weeks, and that would have put it to next week. But here we are on December 4th, or excuse me, December 3rd, and now we are waiting to hear the verdict. So as soon as that comes in, and we should get word here in just a few minutes, we will go ahead and break in once again, Shari, to bring you that verdict live from the Lee County Courthouse. Let's go ahead and listen in right now. Judge Kyle.
Defense is ready. So either side need any time to talk to their sides or their parties, because these things are tough, and I'm not going to have any outbursts.
Judge, we talked on the elevator ride up.
Defense?
We'll find out.
Okay. I mean, if you can't handle it, you should wait in the hallway and let someone tell you after we have the verdict. Bring him out.
Yes, sir.
Jury entry.
Jury has reached a verdict in the Mark Sievers trial. Sievers is accused of hiring his best friend, Curtis Wright, and another man, Jimmy Rogers, to murder his wife, Dr. Teresa Sievers, in 2015. Now, Fox 4 has been on top of this story since the very beginning. We know that the state rested on Monday.
Please be seated.
Rested last night. Let's tune in.
Have you selected a foreperson?
For the verdict.
That's you, ma'am. Have you reached your unanimous verdict? Will you please pass the verdict form to the bailiff? Thank you. We'll let the clerk publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 20th Judicial Circuit, in and for Lee County, Florida, criminal action. State of Florida versus Mark D. Sievers, case number 15 CF 673B. Verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. Count 1, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Conspiracy. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy. So say we all, December 4th, 2019, by the foreperson.
Would either side like the jury polled?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, if I could have you state your name or your juror ID number. As well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes, it was.
Sir, your name or ID number? Was that your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes, it was.
Ma'am, your name or ID number? That's your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole? Ma'am, your name or ID number?
So the verdict is in.
Your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole.
Has been found guilty of first-degree murder. He has also been found guilty of conspiracy. If you are just joining us, this verdict just came down to us after deliberations. This was a really quick turnaround. We even here were not expecting this so quickly, but Fox 4 has been on top of this story from the beginning. Again, we've been following this story. We know for a while that Sievers was accused of hiring his best friend, Curtis Wright, and another man, Jimmy Rogers, to murder his wife, Dr. Teresa Sievers, a well-known, well-respected doctor here in Southwest Florida, particularly in Bonita Springs, involved with many organizations here in our area. We now know that Mark Sievers has been found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy. Let's listen back in.
And was that your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury, as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole? Ma'am, your name or ID number? Was that your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury as a whole?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to have to set another court date for the next phase of the trial. I'm going to have to ask that you go back to the jury room for a few moments so I can talk to both sides about that for a moment. And we'll be with you momentarily.
Just vacate.
Please be seated.
All right, you heard it. The jury found Mark Sievers guilty on first-degree murder and guilty on conspiracy. Our legal expert, Dr. Pamela C. From FGCU, is here now weighing in. Surprised?
For them to come back so quickly.
So quickly.
No, I'm not surprised. I actually thought they would take a little bit longer to examine some of the evidence, but apparently they were thoroughly convinced by the arguments. And for them to say this was conspiracy, that created the premeditation, therefore that makes it first-degree murder. Yeah. And I can imagine the feeling of almost relief perhaps of the family right now when they look at this and say, yes, we know that he did it, and to have the man off the street. I'm actually a little disappointed that the jury didn't take just a little more time for only about, 4 hours?
Right.
That's not quite a lot of time to look at a couple of weeks of testimony and information. A lot of it very confusing, a lot of it repetitive, but all of it very important. So I think I'm not surprised at the actual verdict.
Okay. Just the time it took to get there.
The time it took.
They must have gauged then each day how they were feeling, the evidence they felt was clear to them, pointing in this direction.
And, well, they were asking, I thought it was interesting, they were asking for the yellow stickies, okay? They wanted the little Post-it notes. What were they using those for? Did they have to point it all out to everyone? I'd be real curious. I would love to be able to talk to one of the jurors and find out what were they going through in this process. It was a challenging case. I thought the defense did as well as they could in trying to poke holes in those arguments. And in many instances, I thought they really had it for a couple of things. But apparently, this jury believed Curtis Wayne Wright, and that was the clincher, I think.
He wasn't there. Still first-degree murder.
Still first-degree murder. Why? Because it's premeditation. And when you have a first-degree murder charge, there's certain things you have to prove. First of all, that she was dead. That's an easy one.
Right.
But it was caused by this person. Okay? If he was thinking about it, he planned it. If there's this conspiracy, they proved the conspiracy, therefore he planned it, and therefore he thought about it, it was premeditated. Premeditated murder, that's first degree. He will be talking to the jury again about whether or not he will get a death penalty.
All right. Let's go ahead and listen in for a sentencing date. Okay.
We're going to remain in recess for just a few moments. It's been an emotional moment for some of our jurors, so they need a few moments. So we'll be in recess for about 5 minutes. Tuesday's probably better than I can do on Monday.
All right, so they're going to take a little recess.
Is that your verdict as well as the verdict of the jury?
And again, the jurors, there is a motion.
Are they polling the jurors now?
Polling the motion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, polling the jurors.
Yeah, what they do at that point is that they ask each of the jurors, "Is this your verdict on this count?"
Mm-hmm.
And each one of them individually will have to either stand or
Teresa's
speak up and say,
crying
"Yes."
right now.
I can imagine. The emotion in that courtroom must be just incredible.
Palpable.
Yes.
Feel that. So, again, polling the jurors.
And that is very common for something of this nature.
Mark Sievers is showing a lot of emotion.
If Mark Sievers is showing some emotion, this is a first, really. If it's true emotion, that was a first for him in this trial. And that, I think, has been his undoing. He has not been able to convey any kind of remorse, compassion, concern. He lost his wife, and there was never any indication from him. And I think that probably sold the jury as much as the testimony and the evidence did.
Since it is first-degree murder, now death penalty is on the table?
Right. And what happens next is what they call the penalty phase of the trial. These very same jurors will come together and they will listen to additional testimony and evidence relating to whether or not this man should receive the death penalty. They will learn about aggravating and mitigating circumstances and try to find something to preserve him from actually receiving a death penalty, a death sentence.
Okay. Sandra Rodriguez made it to the courtroom. We are standing by to hear from her. Is she ready? This all happened so fast, and we expected to see the jurors come out at 6:30. They were supposed to be deliberating until 6:30. Sure enough, we got word that a verdict had been reached here right at the 11th minute, the last minute. So Sandra was able to get back inside into the Lee County Courthouse and bring us that perspective, what's happening inside. But the emotion inside that courtroom, everyone's breaking down. Relief, release.
A lot of that. I think it's a combination of all of that. And when you have been just so keyed up and you've been focused on one thing and you have a task, even the attorneys have a task that they have to do, they have to accomplish, and they're done, and now they were waiting, and it's over. It's a total release, and that's where they can lose control.
Let's go ahead and listen back in the courtroom. All right, so Mark is crying, otherwise silent right now, still polling the jurors. That takes a little while.
It does. You go through each individual juror, and because there were there were two counts, they will have to ask about both of them because they are connected. Without the conspiracy, you do not have a murder conviction. So in order for that to have happened, if there was no conspiracy, what did he do?
Right.
So that was key to this entire matter. So that's big. And what they'll do is ask each juror number 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 2, and go through the whole jury pool.
All right. Sandra Rodriguez is standing by outside the courtroom right now. Let's see if she is up. Sandra?
Jane, the verdict just came in. The jury found Mark Sievers guilty of first-degree murder. And as you can imagine, they were very emotional to hear that verdict, holding hands, exchanging hugs, and giving each other kisses and tears as they heard the news. Right now, we are waiting for the family to come out of the courtroom. Now we know that the death penalty phase will begin on Tuesday, December the 10th. And now Mark Sievers could be facing the death penalty. Right now, we're still waiting for everyone to come out. We can hear the judge now asking everyone to get seated inside of the courtroom. Of course, we'll keep you updated on what happens. We're going to sit here and wait to see when the family comes out. It could be at any moment now. Again, a very, very emotional moment for the family to hear that verdict. We're getting in place, waiting to see if the family comes out. Judge Kyle did say that this was also a very emotional moment for some of the jurors, and some of them said they needed a few minutes to get themselves together. And okay, so right now we just got word that the judge is releasing the jury. We can expect the family to come out at any minute.
Sounds good. Do you have a live view or no? No. Okay.
I'm sure they're exchanging a few words at this moment. Right now, sequestration is still on the table. The judge said that he needed to know so that he could let the jury members know if they need to prepare themselves to stay on Tuesday when the second phase of this trial is Okay, so right now we're going to wait and see when the family comes out, and of course we will keep you posted on whatever happens as soon as the court is released here.
Sandra, do you have any sense of the emotion from either Teresa Sievers' family or Mark Sievers? What does that feel like? What is the sense inside the courtroom?
It was very emotional when they heard the verdict. You could hear them gasping, almost taking a big breath of air to hear the news that they had been waiting to hear for years. To know that the jury found Mark Sievers guilty of first-degree murder. It was extremely emotional, exchanging hugs again in tears.
I want to bring in Dr. Pamela C. again. So the next phase, the penalty phase, is Tuesday, Sandra said. What does that mean? Because we did not see that with Jimmy Rogers.
Well, it was not necessary for the Jimmy Ray Rogers trial because the penalty phase deals with whether or not there will be an imposition of the death penalty. So this is death penalty eligible. They started that from the beginning. They said this is what we're going for. And at that point, when it comes to this penalty phase, it begins on Tuesday. We will have new witnesses. They will be talking about the aggravating circumstances related to the murder. They will talk about any mitigating circumstances specifically relating to Mr. Sievers. Does he have any physical or mental infirmities that may have contributed to this? Were there any circumstances that would cause this to be a lesser penalty other than death? I mean, that's pretty.
That's it. That's the end. That's the ultimate. And for the jurors, then sequestration is then on the table?
Yes, it is. Now, it could be waived. Generally speaking, for the penalty phase, it's not going to be waived. And what they're looking at, these jurors will be spending their time together. They'll be listening to this evidence. It's not going to go on as the same trial did. The same evidence rules apply and all, but you're gathering different information, and it will not last nearly as long.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you, what can we expect as far as timeline?
You may look at 2 days, maybe 3 at the most, and at that point, that's when the jury makes a recommendation.
Any other surprises from this trial?
It was all a surprise.
Today has been, I knew today was going to be a big day.
But not like this. This has been one crazy day at the courthouse with so many different things. The videographer, the private investigator, questions, going to the jury, Mr. Sievers deciding not to testify. There were a lot of things that happened today that were key to this trial, and to get a verdict all at the same day. That was extraordinary.
Everything in hindsight, of course, but now should Mark Sievers, should he have taken the stand? It would still
It wouldn't have hurt.
Yeah,
it could not have hurt at this point. You know, when you're looking at it with 20/20 hindsight, yeah, he probably should have taken a stand.
Anything that you last would like to say?
I'm just so glad it's over. We just want to get on with our lives now.
Excuse me. We got some more.
I don't know if I can do it.
We just spoke with Teresa Sievers' family. They say they are very happy with the verdict, and justice has been served for their sister, Teresa Sievers. It was very emotional to see them walking out of the courtroom in tears. And again, they said they are very happy with the verdict, and justice was served for Teresa Sievers, something they've been waiting for years, and it finally came in. We are waiting for the attorneys to come.
All right, Pamela, is there any one testimony that did it for the state, that knocked it out for them?
Well, the one thing that the jury had to believe was the information provided by Curtis Wainwright. There were no smoking guns. When you looked at the text messages, nothing truly said, "I want you to kill my wife." There was nothing there. It was a lot of indicators, but all of that information did was support what Curtis Wainwright said on the stand.
Even with all the inconsistencies, he lied at first to investigators, changed his tune. We realized he was going to be part of a plea deal, and he was still believable.
And, well, at least to the jury right now, and that's key. It is the jury's responsibility to decide who and what to believe. They chose to believe Curtis Wainwright, and that he was the one who dealt with Mark Sievers, and that it was a conspiracy. They believed him. I'm not sure that I would have, but they certainly did, and they did it quickly.
Yes. So, I mean, it makes me think this whole time then they were leaning towards a certain way. They just needed those closing arguments to bring it to the end.
Very possibly, yes.
So, moving ahead, if not the death penalty, what are some of the other...
Life.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be, when you're looking at 25 to life or life. And that will be the decision made in the court next week.
All right. New witnesses, I mean, it seems like they've called up everybody.
Well, at this point, you're going to be looking at information finally about Mr. Sievers himself. We will learn a little bit more about what he is like. And you know, when I mentioned, is there a possibility of some physical or mental infirmities that he may have that we've never been aware of, that would cause him that would cause a problem for him in prison, or maybe he's got some issues that he needs to attend to, or maybe there may have been at some point where he could have attempted to stop the proceedings, or that maybe there's a text message somewhere that he sent that says, "Please don't do it, stop." Only it went ahead.
Yeah.
The fact that it went ahead, you know, he's still on the hook. But if there was anything that they can hang their hat on, he still did it. He's still responsible, and he's still going away for life. But maybe they can save him from the death penalty.
We are pleased with the judges. We are pleased with the jury's verdict, and the family, as you can see, has had a sense of such relief. But this is only the first stage, and there is a second phase that is coming next week. So it's time for us to get back to work.
Anything, Mr. Hunter?
Ditto.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
We just heard from the state attorneys, both saying they're happy with the verdict, but this is just the beginning, and they still have a lot of work to do for that next phase, which is the penalty phase. And of course, we're going to wait here for the defense attorneys to come out and see what their thoughts are on this verdict.
The state attorney said they are happy with the verdict, as well as having a lot of work to do. What does that work entail?
Well, one of the things they have to do is prepare for that penalty phase. They will need to gather information and make sure that they have witnesses to show that there are no mitigating circumstances, that it is only aggravating circumstances, that this man deserves the death penalty. Now, they have been clear about that since the very beginning, that this should be the death penalty. So I think they're going to have their work cut out for them. As for the defense, they will need to gather their witnesses to see if they can find some mitigating circumstances here.
Any talk yet about appeals? Do they immediately go file an appeal?
Well, you have 30 days, so there will be some time for them. They probably will go ahead and file a notice of appeal. And if there is a death penalty, there are some automatic appeals that take place too. So, yeah, are we going to be seeing this case for a good while to come? You bet we are. There are going to be appeals, and they're going to be fast and furious to start with. But as we all know, with death penalty cases, they will go on a long time.
Absolutely. Well, we are still waiting to hear from potentially the family of Dr. Teresa Sievers, waiting for them to come out of the courtroom. The defense attorney has had nothing, is not out yet, so we're waiting for them to come out of the courtroom as well. Is it a defeat for the defense? I mean, it is.
Oh, it's a devastating defeat for them. I think a win for them.
Yeah, what is a win?
A win for them would be not guilty, because the only thing that if they proved this conspiracy, he's guilty of everything. If they did not prove conspiracy, he's free to go. They had one thing to do, and they failed. So yeah, they had a bad day today.
Mark Sievers this morning said he'd like to go home.
No, that's not going to happen.
What happens to him now?
He'll be back in jail.
Okay.
And they've been holding him,
right?
And they will hold him in jail until he is sentenced. Once he is sentenced, that's when they will assign him to a particular prison.
The kids. We never really talked about the kids.
Well, I thought that if I'm not mistaken, the kids went with their grandmother to stay.
That was that last check, yeah.
And yeah, so the kids will probably remain there, and more likely than not, there will be another hearing for those children to either make that a permanent situation or find a way to find them a permanent place to live. This is devastating. They've lost their mother.
Exactly.
Now they've lost their father.
Right.
For them, this is the worst possible scenario for them. But then, think back when Mark Sievers, the story that came from his friend, that Mark wanted to protect his children.
Right.
Well, this wasn't the way to do it.
Yeah.
And
the irony.
Now we need to find a way to protect those children, and I think protecting them from such things as the spotlight.
Exactly.
Those are little.
They were young
kids.
and
What do
still
they know?
very young.
They're going to have a very difficult, challenging life ahead. And I feel for them. I feel for the family.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very challenging for them.
I mean, if it becomes a custody thing again, Mark was fighting for his own mother to watch the girls. Does he have any say anymore when it comes to custody? That
is a question I would ask of a family law attorney, because right at the moment I am not aware of specifics.
Right.
There are some things that they still have.
They have rights,
and that would be determined in the court. So when they go in for the determination of sole custody. So let's say that the sole custody goes to Teresa Sievers' sister or mother.
Right.
Well, at that point, the judge can also determine that there will be no contact, and that's an important part. He can determine no contact from the father, and if the father's in jail, there's nothing. He has no impact. He has no input. He has nothing. So that's important. But until that is determined, he probably can. So I think that's a scary one right there.
We are waiting for the defense attorneys to come out of the courtroom. Sandra Rodriguez is upstairs on the 8th floor, so we are just waiting for them for some reaction. But right now, it is just them. Have we seen the family come out yet?
No, they're waiting for the defense to come out.
We're waiting. We are waiting for the defense. Okay, so the family did come out, obviously very emotional. Just waiting for the defense's reaction. I can't imagine it's going to be good. I mean, I remember when the verdict for Jimmy Rogers came out, and we were waiting outside the courtroom, and while the state attorneys spoke, albeit a short little statement, the defense had no comment.
Which is appropriate.
Yeah.
They need to keep that to themselves right now because they need to look forward to what kind of appeals they may wish to file. And if they are filing an appeal, which they certainly will, and part of that would be to preserve and protect his status and try to find a way to keep him out of jail, well, or get him out of jail. But I don't know that an appeal is going to happen anytime soon. It would be heard, certainly not anytime soon.
All right. It has been an eventful few weeks here.
Yes, it has.
The jury selection took a little while. That was just kind of a little mundane. Some of the opening statements, a little mundane in the case presentations. We had some dynamic testimonies, some new statements from Curtis Wainwright there for a little bit. But in the end, it came down to believing Curtis Wainwright's testimony that he was hired by his friend, Mark Sievers, to kill his wife.
That's absolutely right. The jury chose to believe Curtis Wainwright. He told the story, and apparently he was convincing enough. And I would suspect that he will be back again when they talk about the penalty phase. They may ask some additional questions of him. And I'm certain that we're going to hear from the family of of Teresa Sievers and the impact that it has had on their lives, and to talk about the children. So we're going to hear a lot of things in that penalty phase that we certainly were not able to hear in the trial. We might even hear some, when they talk mitigating circumstances, we may hear more about the lifestyle. They say, well, this is what happened. This is what we weren't allowed to tell you.
Right.
Yeah, there were objections that we couldn't tell you, but now we can. So there may be some eye-opening information, or it may not. That's going to be a difficult few days.
We will have more on this verdict. Guilty, first-degree murder for Mark Sievers tonight at 10. Please join us on Fox 4 News at 10. Thanks.